Pete and Carl, you got a term sheet. Now what?
This is the Carl and Dean show. So, no singing, no glee club. Unless someone really asks, I'm willing to entertain. So you're offered a term sheet, one of those coveted things. It was.
So anyway, you start by introducing yourself a little bit. I'll introduce myself. And then
Well, we could do. Everybody knows us. We've been moderating now. Wow. For those of you who haven't woken up yet, I am Dean Rutley. Been practicing 26 years now. I know I don't look it. Thank you very much. But I did practice in the 95 through 2000, 2001 time frame when it was absolutely crazy, the whole dot-com bubble. Did 26 deals in 2000, which was like about 2 a month, which was absolutely insane. That doesn't happen anymore, unfortunately, for a lot of us, you guys and us. I practice primarily in the venture capital arena, but I also do merger and acquisitions in the mid-market, private and public space, and a lot in government contracting. Carl?
So I'm Carl Knoll. First, I'd like to just start by saying we love Pete Erickson. We just love everything
What
he
a
does.
suck up.
All right.
I love you too, man.
I was going to say that's two of us.
Very
You
proud.
still can't have his Bud Light.
We're very proud to have worked with Pete in MoDev and in Disruptathon. We think everything he touches is golden. Dean and I both have very similar practices. We both work with emerging technology companies, and we both work in the venture capital and M&A spaces. Just to throw this out there for you, I don't know if you guys are members of the Northern Virginia Technology Council, but in case you didn't notice, this year they do their hottest ticket awards each year. This year, the hottest startup was a mobile app company, which was MyRate. I don't know if you know it, but they've got the app Who's Here. Who has it on their iPhone? Who's here? Good, excellent. It's kind of a dating app. Just kidding. It's an app that lets you know where people are. They were the hottest tech startup. They're a client of ours. We handled their Series A financing with Lightbank. Also, hottest venture deal of the year was our client Science Logic. They did a $15 million Series A round.
With NEA.
With NEA.
What Carl didn't tell you is that we have the same practice, but he is the younger and more intelligent, more good-looking of the two of us.
All right, so I'd like to argue with that, but I just can't. I don't know what to say.
I got him. All right, so why you got a term sheet, and it was great that Kevin from Vinome was talking about the fact that you get really excited about it, but please, if you learn nothing else from this panel right now, if you get a term sheet, do not think, wow, this looks standard, this looks great. It is full of all kinds of terminology on rights of first refusal, on vesting of founder stock, on liquidation, valuation, and the easy part's the pricing that they may have there. We're going to give you $2 million for 20% of your company or 30% of your company. The hard part is all the mother may I's, the covenants, and all the other stuff that can really, really nail you if you don't at least know. You want to go in with your eyes open. Do not pretend that a term sheet, just because I got a term sheet, I got to sign this. No, there's bad term sheets out there, and you want to sign a fair, good term sheet. So you got why a tied term sheet. A term sheet is something that's presented by the angel or the venture capitalist after they do initial due diligence, and they have determined some level of interest, in you, and they haven't done all the full due diligence yet, but they've done enough to say, look, this is, assuming everything goes forward and due diligence proves out, this is what I'd like to offer. It establishes the valuation, summarizes the basic deal terms, minimizes area of dispute on the definitive documentation, so it just builds the foundational building blocks for the definitive docs, and helps flush out problems on both sides before either side sinks a lot of costs into the deal. Next.
Just to echo Dean's point on, not every term sheet is standard. We have seen at least one example of a VC that or they sort of hold themselves out as a VC, but as part of their term sheet, they wanted the client to put $15,000 down as a deposit. Okay, yeah, seriously.
Yeah, dude,
Seriously.
Johnson, you got to raise that.
So it is crazy. You'll never be asked to put money in to get an investment. Just know that. So, all term sheets aren't the same. The thing we want to talk about just for a half second, angel versus VC term sheets. We're seeing a lot of different things these days, but the old standard was that a lot of angels would invest through convertible debt. We're not going to be talking a lot about convertible debt terms in this presentation. We're going to focus on equity investments. And we're starting to see now in the seed stage a lot of angel investors moving away from equity or from debt investments or convertible debt investments into a sort of a series seed round or a sort of a junior type of equity round. But the old standby of a convertible debt is kind of a nice thing for both parties. For the angel, it's nice because they have a secured debt instrument, so they've got first priority over anything. It's nice for the entrepreneur because you're not determining the valuation at that point. You're kind of kicking the can down the road on valuation. Essentially, they're getting their money in, and the price is going to be set by the equity round, which will be at some time later. Usually they get a discount that's built into that conversion, so they might get a 20, 25, even larger discount. Either that or they'll take a warrant, which is effectively the same thing as getting a discount. And that's what we tend to see.
Next.
Yes, Jonathan. Cap convertible notes have been coming east too fast. We're seeing that what we actually tend to see a lot of is that we have clients that have been getting convertible notes from various angel investors, and then some angel investor comes forward and says, yeah, I want to do it, but I'm only going to do it with a capped convertible note. So they're finding some that will do it without the cap, and then somebody is wanting the cap. So it's not uniform, throughout the angel community yet. But so a capped convertible note is simply this: when we say that we're kicking the can down the road on valuation, a capped convertible note says, yeah, we'll kick the can down the road a little ways, but if your valuation gets above a certain amount, we're going to convert at that price. So they might say a $2 million pre-money or a $3 million pre-money is the maximum we'll convert at. So if your Series A investor comes in at $5 million, for example, they're not going to convert at the $5 million pre-money valuation price. And Dean will talk about what I mean when I say that. But essentially, they are not willing to go too far up the ladder before they say that's the price I convert at.
Which and that, either that or what a lot of times in convertible notes, the angel will to set up a situation where they either get warrants or they did a discount, a 20% discount going in. That was the old model a lot before the cap was getting more popular. Either one of those things sometimes can create a little bit of a problem when the Series A investor comes in, because they may go, look, if the angel put in $1 million and they're about to put in $5 million at a $5 million pre, and the cap is at $2 million, they're going to sit there and wait a minute, these guys are not coming in for that much stock if I'm going to write this large check. That usually gets worked out where the angel may have to back down and revise those terms and take a haircut for the Series A investor to come in. So, because the Series A will say, look, I'm walking then. I'm just not going to do this deal. There's so many, like Jen said, a lot of these VCs are getting, 30 term sheets, executive plans a week, and if it gets too expensive, those walk away. But anyway, that becomes a point of negotiation. The next slide you were going to do, Carl?
Okay, so the next slide just talks about some of the major issues that you might confront as you do an equity financing. And for entrepreneurs, we often sort of counsel them, you may want to pick for you what are the issues that are the most important. And for some entrepreneurs, it's more about the economics. I want to get the very best price deal I can get, so that I'm giving up the smallest percent of the company that I need to give up to get down the road. For others, it's more about control. And so they say, look, I've got a choice between 2 or 3 investors, this guy wants to control the board, this guy wants to control the board, this guy is willing to, just have 1 seat on the board and let me continue to sort of control the company. And, he's not offering as good a price, but for control, I'm going to take that term sheet. So it's sort of a picking your battles. Are the economics the most important to you? Is the control rights going to be more important to you? And then there's other types of shareholder rights that might be hot button issues. So let's talk about each one.
All right, economics. Here's some of the terminology you need to have at least a working understanding on. And in the time we have here, by the way, we're scratching the surface. Happy to talk to people. We're here at every MoDev DC. Happy to talk to you on the side about this. Happy to have you come in for a cup of coffee in our conference room and talk to you about some of these definitions more. But essentially, every term sheet will have a pre-money valuation and a post-money valuation, the type of security that they're investing in, and then the issue of dividends. The pre-money valuation is the percentage of the company received for the investment. So if a VC comes into you and says, look, I'm willing to give you $1 million for 10% of your company, well, then they're giving you a $9 million pre-money valuation and a $10 million post-money valuation, and that's how you get to the math. And by the way, valuation, I think somebody was hinting at that when the VC panel was up here about how do you get the valuation. And valuation is often backed into, because there's all kinds of public information out there on public companies and on some private company deals. Most small deals are under the radar screen. There's no data points, and so really it's a function of how much that VC is excited about you and your company and your product and your idea. And generally it's a back of the envelope math. If I'm willing to give you $1 million, I think you're really hot for 1%, for 10% of your company, that's a $9 million pre. If I want 50% of your company, that's a $1 million pre and a 2 post. So you can see it's a function of that. That's how you figure it out. The type of
just to summarize, it's essentially pre-money valuation is just a function of the percentage of the company they need to make the investment worthwhile. Really doesn't have anything to do with the value of the company. It's if I'm going to invest $1 million in this company, I need 30% of it. It's just that simple.
But then from that, you get the valuation. The type of security, preferred stock versus common. Obviously, sometimes angels will come in for common stock. Friends, family rounds will come in for common stock. We are now seeing, as Carl mentioned before, preferred seed. And actually, the certificates are called preferred seed. They don't have all the attributes, like they may not have the investor rights agreement for IPOs and things like that, but they'll have certain other rights. So it's like a light version of the Series A. Most investors coming in for preferred stock do want to have some kind of preferences, and that we'll be getting into. And then dividends is cumulative versus non-cumulative. Dividends has to do with if they invest money in you as debt, as a convertible debt, they're going to be getting an interest rate on that, generally 8%, and that's generally where most of the dividends are. And so, the dividends are, if they're not paid, they will accumulate over time, even if they're not declared, and that will be added up, and then you get whether they're compounding or non-compounding. So this is something we can also, in the interest of time, talk about more later. Valuation.
So you talked about most of these points.
We talked about this, the pre-money and the post-money. I touched on that, and the impact of options. So this is when a lot of you probably know that a venture capitalist comes in, and the company, like Valerie was saying, they'll help you build out the management team. But one of the things that Valerie is going to want to do is say, look, I can get you a CFO, or I can get you a COO, or a vice president of sales. But you know what? You don't have a ton of money here, especially with the angel money we're putting in. That's for the prototype. You don't have a ton of money to pay these guys, but they'll take some skin in the game, And so you're going to sit there and go, well, wait a minute, I don't necessarily want to give out 10% of my company to some guy who may worked with me for 6 months and then leaves and quits, and then I'm out 10% of my company. So you set up a stock option plan, a qualified plan, and the VC will, or the angel will tell you, look, when we fund this plan with anywhere from 10 to sometimes 20% of the company, and then you put that out and you give an option, and those options vest over time. This way you know the person's going to stay. The longer they stay, the more a percentage of the options vest that they can exercise in. And generally that comes out of your hide. It is sometimes the case where the venture capitalist or the angel will put the money in first, and then on a post investment basis bring in the 10%, and they'll be diluted as well as you equally or pro rata. Other times they'll say, no, that comes out of you first, then I put my money in. So on a pre-investment basis, and that's more dilutive of you. So if the VC's buying 20% of the company and you're down to 80, they're going to say, well, wait a minute, if we're putting 20 in, you're down to 60. 20 for the plan, 20 for me, 60 for you.
Great. Next slide is type of security. Oh, did we pass type of security?
You have the old slide.
There we go. Okay, type of security. Basically, as we mentioned, they're generally venture capitalists and more often angel investors are wanting to receive a preferred stock for their investment. And in a nutshell, since I think we only have 12 minutes left, in a nutshell, preferred stock is a stock that gets paid back first in a liquidation of the company. So if you go and sell the company and you sell it for, a ton of money, then it might not matter so much to you that they have preferred stock, because they'll get paid back and then you guys will share in everything that's left.
Oops, me. My turn. We got a design flaw here. Come back.
So that is a participating preferred stock.
Sorry, guys.
Occasionally, venture capital investors or angel investors will take a common, but that is the very, very rare circumstance. Usually they want a preferred. And so what you end up negotiating is, what type of preferred stock is it? Is this going to be a situation where you have what they call a fully participating preferred, where you get your money back first? So let's say the venture capitalist puts in $1 million, and let's say the company gets sold for $3 million. Okay, the question is, do you get your $1 million back first, and then we share? Yeah, the investor, and then we share in the $2 million that's left based on our relative percentages? Is that the deal, or is the deal, you get your $1 million back first, but since there's $2 million left, and you would actually end up with a whole lot more than your $1 million, is your preferred going to be converted to common so that we share in everything side by side? That's basically the negotiation point. That's a preferred participating versus a non-participating preferred. Okay, and essentially a non-participating preferred is what you're going to want to have. That's going to be the best deal for you. It essentially gives the venture investor the right to get their money back first if it's a bad sale, if the company isn't going to be sold for a profit. But if it is going to be sold for a profit and everyone makes money, then it's as though they had common the whole time, and you're going to share based on percentage interest. Okay, that's it in a nutshell. There's one in between that's called a capped participating preferred, but that's for the advanced class. Come back if you
Ask for our card, we'll give it to you. Dividends.
Okay, so I'll just cover dividends real quick. Dean already mentioned this. Basically, the game is won or lost as to whether it's a cumulative dividend or a non-cumulative dividend, okay? If it's a cumulative dividend, it means it is like an interest check that you have to write every month. It's going to accrue year to year. It's going to be 8%. And so if you, for example, are giving up 20% of your company for the investment, 8% is going to accrue to that each year on top of that investment. So it's 20, and then in year 2 it's 24, and then in year 5 it's 26, 28, whatever the math works out to be. That dividend can essentially increase their percentage ownership over time. So, what you're wanting as an entrepreneur is to have a non-cumulative dividend. That essentially means if you ever declare a dividend, then they get dividends too, in preference to your own. But if you don't declare a dividend, then there's no dividends that accrue. There's There's, again, an advanced class on this, which is whether or not the cumulative dividend could be converted to cash or converted to stock at the election of the investor or the election of the company. That could, prevent you from actually losing a larger percentage of your company. But again, that's the master class.
There you go. Control. Our next issue is control. Board representation. Do you have a voice in the company as an entrepreneur, equality with the investor, or do you have control? If the VC ends up with 3 of the 5 board seats, 1 independent, and you as a one common founder representative, you have a voice in the management of the company going forward. If there is 2 VC board seats, 2 common seats, and for the founders, and 1 independent, you basically have equality in that situation. If you have 3 board seats and the VC has 2, or you have 2 and the VC has 1 and there's 2 independents, you still have control basically of that situation. So that is something that you have to decide. As Carl said in the beginning, when the 3 buckets of issues, you have to decide what is your flavor and negotiate with the VCs on that as to whether price is the biggest thing, valuation, how much of the economics, how much money are you taking for how much of your company you're giving up, versus control. And some entrepreneurs would rather take a lower price if they can keep their hands on the captain's wheel and be able, if they say we're turning right and the VCs know, I want you to turn left, they're saying, all right, I hear you, but I'm turning right. It's my company. So that's an important decision to make. Voting of shares, board election, representation. How are the board of directors chosen? Typically, in a Series A investment, there is a voting rights agreement in which all the shareholders, the key holders, the founders, and the VC decide how they will vote their shares and who gets to pick. So if there is if there's a lead VC, like if 4 to 5 VC is leading the round, and then there's 4 angels going along, and Jonathan's firm is putting the most money in, they may have in a voting rights agreement that all the A have to agree that he gets to nominate, his organization gets to nominate the Series A representative, and that no one will fart with that as long as he keeps a certain minimum number of shares. Okay, so these are all like control issues. There's not the big control issue, then there's many control issues. Protective shareholder voting rights, changes to the organizational documents. Can the company issue another round of shares without going to the VC and having a mother may I? So what some of the the very nice VCs who gave you money will ask for is a laundry list of covenants that says that you cannot change the charter without getting a majority of the Series A vote. You cannot have another class of stock without getting the Series A vote. Even if you have, let's say the VC has 20% of the company on a voting basis and you have 80%, they're saying you have to go through me for these extraordinary events. And sometimes you'll see the list, Carl, you know this, we see term sheets where it's like, you cannot buy a pack of pencils without a Series A vote. And that's where the good lawyers like Carl and I come along and say, no, Jonathan, they can have the pencils without a vote. Yes.
How many investors open source their docs like Series C does? That how many VCs do that?
Open source their docs? I don't know of very many.
You guys investor did that? Oh, yeah. We're gonna do that. So thank you.
There you go, a testimonial. They're going to open source their docs and put them out there, and then we'll eliminate the mother may I's. We'll just do it on the front end. It'll be like Wikipedia. We could go in and edit and change his terms. And there you go. So that's a really honest thing to do.
Some investors don't want to control the company.
Right.
Control the company, it's too late.
And it often comes down to sort of you and the team that you have in place. A lot of VCs are willing to forego a lot of the mother may I's when they know they're working with a serial entrepreneur, somebody who's been there, done that a couple times. Then it's like, hey, I know I can trust this guy to make the right decisions. He's not going to do some stupid financing round that's going to screw up the company later. I'll leave him in control. But if it's your sort of first time and you've got another couple guys that are first timers with you, then in that situation they may feel like, look, we really need to have some of those mother may I's to make sure that this thing doesn't go completely off track. So,
hey guys, do we have time for a few questions? I know you got some more to get through, but we've got about 5 minutes left.
Sure. How many people would like to hear 3 more minutes of this and then open it up for 5 minutes of questions? Can people stay for 10 minutes? All right. Seems like it's a crowd that likes what they're hearing, I guess. Some people need a life. But anyway, here we go. So
Dean always assumes that you like what he's hearing.
So additional thing on control is sale of the company, what's called drag-along rights. Tag-along, drag-along rights, that's somewhat for the advanced class, but in essence, just one piece on that is drag-along. If 90% of the company wants to sell on an M&A acquisition, you don't want a 10% holder saying, I'm not selling my shares, and therefore the big IBM wants to buy your company, says like, well, I'm not buying 90% of the company, I'm buying 100%, or I'm buying nothing. And so there's an ability that everyone signs these documents that if a certain majority wants to sell 66 2/3, some percentage, that the minority has to come along. They don't have a choice in the matter. Shareholder rights, real quick. Protecting the investment. There's anti-dilution protections. That's for the VCs and angels. That if you do get to issue a new round, that they have an ability to buy some of that stock and participate in that. There's preemptive rights. And then restrictions on transfer of shares. There's what's called a right of first refusal, or right of first offer or refusal. So if you go to sell your shares, you're the founder, the VC comes in for 20%, and you're selling your 80% to someone else. The VC says, wait a minute, I invested in you, I invested in this management team, and you're selling it to these guys on this side of the room. I don't know about them, and I'm not sure I want to be in bed with them on this investment going forward. So if you're selling 80%, then I'm going to tag along, and half of my, some part of my 80% of my 20% is going to get sold to them as well. So it's another protection for the VC. Carl, you were going to getting to the exit.
Yeah. So. Just to finish up here, as Dean was saying, some of the ways the VCs protect themselves are having these other shareholder rights. So as Dean mentioned, as an example, if you're going to try to raise additional money and they own 20% of the company, even if you don't have the mother may I's, they can always come in for 20% of the next round if they have that right of first offer, right? So the company has to give them the chance. So if Valerie's my angel, I've got to go to Valerie and say, hey, I'm going to sell $1 million more. Do you want to buy 20% of that? And she can say yes. And if she says yes, then I have to sell it to her. She's got that right. If she says no, then I don't have to. And likewise, if she has anti-dilution protections and she's paid $1 per share, and then I turn around and sell shares at 50 cents per share, then her shares become, through the anti-dilution protection, convertible into more shares of stock without her doing anything at all. So instead of, having her shares convert into, 1-for-1 into common, her shares might convert, every preferred becomes 2 shares of common because I've just sold at half the price.
And then you get into the advanced class of there's what's called weighted average, broad-based weighted average dilution, a narrow-based, and then there's also a full ratchet. Yep. So if there's a down round, it goes down to, every share goes down to the price of the new round, the new down round. But again, advanced class stuff.
So the other thing the VCs want to do to be able to protect themselves is get out. They put money in, you're just not getting anywhere or whatever. They need to be able to get their money out at some point. So they'll insist on something like a demand registration right, which says, well, you've done pretty well because they're going to force you to go public, right? So you've done all right if they demand your registration. But the other thing they have is a redemption right. And that usually is 5 years out. And essentially it says, look, at 5 years, if we haven't already sold this company or gone public, I can force you to buy my shares back at the fair market value. So whatever they're worth at the time, you're going to have to pay me that for my shares. And that gives them a guarantee of liquidity. They're going to insist on having that kind of right, but it gives them some protection on being able to get out of the investment.
And that can have a floor. I've worked not as much lately. I don't know if you've seen this car lately, but in 99, 2000, a lot of times there was a floor on that. It would be fair market value, but a minimum of 2x or 3x return. So, you know, even if the company was valued under, they'd say, well, this was your fault. You were running the company, Mr. Entrepreneur, our founder team. And so we want 5 years after our investment, we want our money back at a 3 times or a 5 times, some kind of minimum floor. Okay.
So we just ran you through a 1.5-hour presentation in about 30 minutes. So we apologize. There's probably a lot of stuff that was that came a little too quick, but you know, this is a summary of some of the issues you're going to see in any kind of equity financing. I would encourage you to get involved with lawyers early. You know, we do these types of things. We actually have a whole series of seminars that we give, and all that is off the clock. So to the extent you know, just want to get that education, that's one of the things we do. You know, don't try to negotiate one of these deals on your own, is all I would say, whether it's us or other lawyers. You know, I would definitely, once you're into a financing transaction, work with lawyers to help you negotiate the obstacles. So, questions?
Yeah, talking about a slightly different issue, which is still relevant to you guys. Can you talk about the issue of patents and copyright up front and how you deal with that? Is that something that someone can sort of research on their own up to a certain point, or is that something that lawyers should be involved in?
You two behave yourselves. So I'm going to take a quick step, because these two guys, I had them like barely breathing outside a little while ago, because literally, I mean, patents are really important, but a patent is obviously is not a right to practice an art. It's a right to prevent others from practicing a certain feature of that art. And we were talking about how at my old law firm, we were representing Citibank doing a boatload of about $200,000, $300,000 a month of patent work. And when an executive said, hey, look, my wife has this great idea. Can you guys please run it to ground? Because she's bugging me every day to talk to you guys. And so what her idea was you know, she played tennis at the country club because she worked for a senior vice president of Citibank, and she had the great idea of putting Velcro on the end of the tennis racket so that you wouldn't have to bend over to pick up the tennis balls. You could just kind of use the Velcro to pick them up. And of course, we start going nuts and going, well, there's only about 8 billion people who have thought of that before her. So we actually went ahead and did the research, because we told him this. He goes, no, you have to do the research so I can show her something and go, yes, there indeed was really 8 billion people who thought of this before you, including the Chinese. And so so anyway, so patents, trademarks are I did this for them in the front row here. Now, patents, trademarks, intellectual property, really important. I will tell you, it was much more important as one of the old timers up here between the two of us. In the 95 through 2000 time frame, VCs would invest on intellectual property and patents first. Now it's management team and revenue before, you know, and revenue model before IP. A pending patent is worth virtually nothing. Just because you have a pending patent, it doesn't mean it's going to be issued. An issued patent means something, and an issued patent that is is very broad. What's called a blocking patent is really important. If it's really narrow, if the claims that were issued by the patent office are extremely narrow, and anybody else can design around it, it has limited utility. But you know,
I'm sure the 75 patent lawyers that work for our law firm would disagree with what you just said.
No, I think a lot of them would agree.
Steve.
As a technology house, we very rarely get involved with venture capitalists, but lots of times we get people who have ideas come to us saying, we're going to get angel funding, venture capitalists, and they go out and they do that. As a technology house who is generally done as a work for hire, is there any areas that we should be talking to lawyers about to protect ourselves from the person who's working with venture capitalists? Or is there a division because we're working for hire with them that we don't have to worry about any of these?
So I'm sorry, so you're saying you do development.
Yeah, we're the development house who gets hired.
And you're working with companies that are funded by venture capitalists. You have contracts with these companies.
Right, is there any
And there's
trickle down that we have to worry about at all?
And you've just heard so much that's scary about venture capitalists and angel investors. You're saying, are they going to screw us too? Is that a fair summary?
Do they want a part of our company?
Hey, nice work, Jonathan. That's a
Jonathan says, I'm investing in your company and I want 20% of all your vendors, including Microsoft, damn it.
Whose invoices are scary?
So the answer is no. I think, you know, whenever you're contracting into another company, if you're trying to retain ownership of any kind of IP, you need to be sensitive to that. Usually, a venture capital funded company is going to insist that they own any IP that you're working on for them, and so that's really kind of the whole game, as I see it. That and indemnification risks. And you should certainly be sensitive to those.
But to add to that, Steve, what you're going to want on your end, and this is really important for the guys who do work for developers and all who do work for venture-backed companies. Generally, the venture cap company, Carl's exactly right. It's two ways. On the one side, the VCs or the lawyers or the company's lawyers who are buying your services are going to want to say, look, when we're hiring you as a developer to help us build out this code, and we want to own that because we're paying you as a consultant to help build this. On the other hand, you've got to be careful on your end. What the improvement that you build, if you're using certain processes, tools, or base intellectual property that you own, that you're going to be using to help create the code for them, the specialized code, you want to make sure that your agreements say, you, Mr. VC-backed company, get this improvement, but you're not getting our machinery. You'll get the product that comes out, but you're not getting the manufacturing process because they could put you out of business.
No, we do that all the time.
Right.
We give them an instance of our code base, but we've been spending 20 years creating these tools, and we're not giving that away.
Right. So the agreements just, and this is where, you know, good lawyers are worth the money spent on them is to draw that very fine distinction for their client, whether they're representing you or representing the VC-backed company. And really, I tell you what, this is not an adverse situation. Even when we're talking to the attorneys on the other side, we're talking to, you know, the company's attorneys. If we're representing you, we're sitting there like, look, let's just bring clarity to this situation so there isn't a post, you know, deal litigation matter as to who owns what. It's just far cheaper to do it right on the front end than it is to get into the litigation mode on the back end.
We've got time for one more question.
What are typical terms of payments to law firms from the head of them?
We work for free.
Everything's free. Yeah, it's just all free. We've taken a moral stand against the venture capitalists. Essentially, we're
this is God's work.
Hey, I saw you laughing earlier at Deem's shameless plug. So,
so what does a typical, I'm a startup, what does a typical like contract look like from a standpoint of, you know, how long is an engagement? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Or can you ratchet things up as I grow and get funding?
So it's a fair question. Let me give my answer. You can jump in. Similar to sort of working with an investor, right? We will often look at companies that we believe are going to be funded, and make a time investment of sorts. I want to be careful; it's not a money investment.
Crazies don't need to apply.
But when entrepreneurs will come in, they'll pitch to us essentially. If we think, yeah, that's exciting, this is a company that's going to get funded, we will often sign them up, and we will do lots of sort of off-the-clock education and do some of the, sort of forms work, like, and we'll get them formed up because there's really nothing to that.
You don't like them, and you think they're not going to raise money.
So if we think that there is more work to be done before they're really ready for an expensive legal bill, we will suggest that to them. We will sort of say, look, similar to sort of a VC, we'll say, we can do this for you. We will be happy to charge you for this. It will cost you this much money. we're not sure that that makes a lot of sense for you. You know, we would suggest maybe this, this, and this, and at that point, maybe our bill will make sense. You know,
Right.
But at this stage, we're not trying to just bring people in and get their money if it's not going to be value add. Essentially, we're going to.
You don't want to kill the goose that's going to lay the golden egg. So you know, so to a certain extent, you get it fat first, and so it lays bigger eggs, and then you get a piece of that. So we often invest in a lot of our clients, and so you know, what Carl just said, like I had a client in the biotech space who, like, for 3 years straight kept coming up and saying, the CFO kept saying, hey, let's do a stock option plan. I'd say, you guys don't need a stock option plan right now. You're not even hiring really right now. So I kept putting off the stock option plan. I did, you don't need to spend even the $2,500 to $5,000 whatever to have a really good customized stock option plan. Even if you want to have a, you know, one of our form middle of the road ones, you don't want to spend the $1,500 for that. I mean, you're better off spending, you know, using that money within your organization. So we were actually, and he was blown away. Alex was going like, you're like turning down legal fees? I'm like, yes, because it's just, you know, I'd rather see you fight and to live to fight another day. And so we often will prioritize things that we think the entrepreneur needs. Like, you really need this. Now you're probably going to need this next. And we will often communicate up front what that costs. We often, for a lot of early stage companies, offer a 10% reduction off all of our rates for the first $100,000 of legal fees that are incurred. So that is another way that we invest into the company. We are a business. We do have to pay the electricity. We do have to pay for, you know, the building we're in and stuff like that, and salaries for associates. But nonetheless, we balance the work we do for the mid-market companies with looking for, you know, those, just like a VC does, looking for those entrepreneurs and founders who really have something exciting, who have a company that we believe is going to be successful. And we do invest both off the clock, as Carl said, and we also invest with money in terms of, you know, cutting our rates for the first 100,000, and also advising clients when they don't want to spend money on us. Again, make sure the company is successful and gets to the point where they are spending money with us where it matters.
And with that, thank you, Carl and Dean. Thank you so much.
Thank you.